Welcome to Zoom In. I'm David Matlin in Tel Aviv. Thanks for joining us wherever you are in the world. Here on the program, always getting into the biggest stories in and around Israel and the wider world. Let's get started. Now we start looking at a few issues really swirling around Israel's Prime Minister Netanyahu today. Now his legislative push to curtail the Supreme Court's powers is facing massive public pushback. In the latest, opposition lawmakers in the Parliament's Constitution, Law and Justice committees are seeking to slow any progress as they submitted a staggering 27,676 reservations or amendment proposals to that coalition's bill, all to limit the court's use of the so-called reasonableness test. Now, but the Prime Minister, he's been forced to address the growing number of high-level IDF reservists as well, threatening to not show up if the overhaul is advanced, and all while barely 24 hours released from an overnight stay at Sheba Medical Center, now with a heart monitor attached. So the focus on the Prime Minister as usual. We go to outside the Prime Minister's office. Our correspondent Ariel Osaran standing by there today to talk about all the issues. Look, I understand first here the Prime Minister, he's feeling compelled, or he's addressing this growing, number of reservists, Israel Defense Force reservists, concerned over the reforms. What form is that taking now from the Prime Minister?
Right, David. So before the reform, the reservists, Netanyahu was asked, also walking into the meeting, and also he opened his speech, his remarks by mentioning his health condition, saying that he's feeling great. And that was important. There was a lot of concern as to his health condition after what happened over the weekend. But regarding the reservists, most of his remarks were indeed aimed at his discontent, with no lack of a better word, to this protest by the reservists. Now, it is important to clarify that we're talking about volunteer reservists, that, yes, the IDF relies on them for their, in parts of its regular standing missions, but these are not reservists who are obliged to serve under law. Now, this is an important clarification, but let's hear from Netanyahu himself what he had to say about these reservists whose refusal to stand up to their service undermines Israel's democracy, as he said. Let's take a listen.
In a democracy, the army is subordinate to the elected government and not the other way around. Whereas in a military regime, the government is subordinate to the army, and more precisely to a group within the army. This is the fundamental difference between a democracy and a military regime. The incitement to refusal and the refusal itself are against democracy and against the law. This is true for any democracy, but in our democracy, the incitement and the refusal directly endangers the security of all Israeli citizens. They harm deterrence against our enemies, who can be easily tempted into acts of aggression against us, and they undermine the discipline within the army, which is the basis of the army's existence in the first place. It's not possible for there to be a group within the army that will threaten the elected government. If we do not do as we wish, we will shut down our security.
Look, the legislative issue is just one thing on the Prime Minister's plate this week. Reports emerging as well that Prime Minister Netanyahu could be angry with Ambassador Michael Herzog to the U.S. for not securing a White House visit yet. As if it has anything to do with the ambassador, President Biden's very much open non-invitations, the displeasure with a lot of activity of this current government. Are there signs, perhaps, that this is getting to the Prime Minister now, this lack of an invite to Washington?
Lack of an invite for Netanyahu, and it's the president's, the ambassador's brother, Ambassador Herzog's brother, the president, Isaac Herzog, who did get an invitation and is expected to be welcomed with open arms in Washington. Look, already since March, when President Biden said it's not going to come in the near term, the invite for Netanyahu, there's been a lot of tensions between Washington and Jerusalem. The latest, obviously, the the harsh discussion that Netanyahu reportedly had with Ambassador Herzog. Just last week, President Biden said that this is perhaps the most fundamental government that Israel has ever had, the most extremist government Israel has ever had, and it is apparent in relations between Israel and the United States. Hopefully, at least as the Biden administration sees Isaac Herzog as a moderate voice in Israel's leadership, there will be some discussion, productive conversation taking place in Washington during this visit.
Ariel Isran, thanks for coming to us from the Prime Minister's office in Jerusalem.